welcome to today's video. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at PEX crimp joints, the joints of how we make them, the crimp connections, and how to do this safely. Stay tuned. One important note for today's video is we are going to be working with copper crimp rings. So we're going to be using crimp style fittings, and we're going to be using PEX B tubing, as opposed to other videos that cover how to do the Pro PEX style fitting with those crimp style fittings. So as covered in other videos, the fittings themselves are different diameters, and it's important to note that we're working with PEX B tubing. These Pro style PEX fittings won't go into that PEX tubing. So we need to make sure we're utilizing the correct fitting. This video is going to cover copper crimp rings and how to work with them. So you're going to need a PEX crimping tool. This seems to be the most common one out there, stylistically anyway. There's a variety of different styles available. This style has the interchangeable jaws in it, which means we can swap them out from 3/8, ½ inch, 5/8, 3/4, and 1 inch PEX. So you'll need that. You'll also need the go, no-go gauge that comes with that crimper, right? So every crimper should come with the go, no-go gauge. We'll cover how to use that. If you plan on removing any of the crimp rings, you'll want a crimp ring remover tool. You can do it with some other hand tools as well, but this makes it a lot easier to remove the crimp rings. You're obviously going to need the crimp rings themselves. There's a variety of different crimp rings out there. These are copper crimp rings, all right? So they make some stainless ones that you need different banding tools for. We're going to cover the actual method of crimping these, compressing those. You will need a method to cut the PEX and get a nice clean square cut. So we just have a simple little PVC or PEX cutting tool. You'll need the fittings associated with the correct copper crimp fittings, and a tape measure to mark your PEX if you need to cut that PEX to a certain length. First thing you're going to have to do is measure out your PEX to the desired length required. So if you need a specific length, you'll have to measure out to that. If you had a marker, you could place the Sharpie mark at that desired length and then go ahead and make that cut. So to make this cut, we're going to make sure, as always, when we're cutting this PEX, that we're making a nice square cut. So if we take a look, this cut itself is at a pretty extreme angle. And you notice when we put the fitting in, we'll be touching on one side of the fitting, and we'll have a lot of exposed brass back on the other side. So when we cut this, we want to make sure we have a nice square cut perpendicular to the pipe. At that point, to make this connection, we're going to take our copper crimp ring and we're going to slide it onto the PEX. We'll take our fitting and bury this fitting completely in, so it's got a stop point there. Make sure it's not sticking out, right? This fitting has a series of barbs on it, so we want to make sure we're completely burying all those barbs. Now at this point, we want to slide this crimp ring back over where the crimp is occurring, and you'll notice these like to move, right? So it can be difficult if you're working overhead or if you're working in a vertical scenario where these slide down on you. If that's the case, occasionally people will take a pair of channel locks or pliers and just crimp these just slightly to start them so there's some pressure on them so they stay in place. In our case, because we're working on the pipe vise or horizontal, I can place that directly where I need it. Where we're placing it is we want to be about 1/8 of an inch or 3/16 of an inch back from the end of the pipe. So I'm not directly at the pipe, I'm not at 1/4, I'm really like at 1/8 of an inch back. So just a little bit of exposed pipe. And that's allowing to make sure we're directly over these barbs that I spoke about earlier, right? We want to make sure we're hitting those. At that point, we can grab our crimping tool, apply this over top of the crimp ring itself. Once again, making sure we didn't bump that crimp ring, all right? Making sure we grab the whole crimp ring itself, making sure we're in a good position, and all we're doing is simply applying pressure until the crimp is made and releasing the tool. Now, it's as simple as that. You can see that fitting is now grabbed in the pipe itself. But with all of our crimp tools, you should get a go, no-go gauge. Now when we look at this go, no-go gauge, we have a line there. Basically what you do not want to happen is to bury this gauge all the way down. So if it buries all the way down, you've crimped it too far. And on the same hand, if it doesn't go at all, it probably hasn't been crimped at all. So we're looking to bring this go, no-go gauge down. And if we look, there's still daylight showing in there, right? But we're not buried all the way down. So this is a successful joint or a successful crimp. That is a go on the gauge itself. Now these fittings can be fairly expensive. So in the event that you're doing a test sample like this, or you want to reuse these fittings, they are reusable, which is really nice. We don't have to unsolder or anything like that. Basically all we're doing is getting this PEX cut close to the fitting. So I'm making sure I'm not cutting on the brass section. We'll get that cut, and I'm going to cut a little closer, so we'll get even closer to that. And at that point, we can take our decrimping tool, or the tool that will actually cut these crimps, slide this round section into the fitting itself, and we're just clicking down until we cut through that copper and cutting through the copper. At that point, fitting pops off, or the crimp ring pops off, excuse me, and we can pull this out and we have salvaged that fitting to reuse again. So that's how we would remove these crimp rings if we needed to reuse the fitting, or in the event that you made a mistake. Thanks for watching, everyone. Hopefully you picked up some tips and tricks of how to work with PEX B tubing and copper crimp connections with these PEX fittings. As always, remember safe working habits while working with tools.